So I made this corduroy Johnny 5 when I was in high school, and that's longer ago than I care to say. Recently, I updated him and basically had to rebuild a lot of him from scratch, including his head. And in that process, I, of course, had to make all the little gadgets and details. And one of the things I did have to make was these blue side vents, and they're fairly difficult to make out of corduroy, but now I've got to make them out of real vents for his big brother, and that is going to prove to be a challenge, to say the least. Well, yesterday it was warm enough outside for me to primer all of Johnny Five's vent fins that go in these frames on the sides of his head. They are not only one of Johnny Five's more distinctive and interesting features, but they're also a whole project in and of themselves. Each fin on one side is not like all the others. They actually have these little dots that tell you which fin it is. And the first fin at the top has one dot, and the bottom fin here at the bottom has 5 dots. And the holes in these are meant to be about 1/16 of an inch. I've had to ream them out with this 1/16 inch drill bit by hand. I'm not using it with the drill, I'm just reaming them out by hand. And I'm using this stainless steel rod because the resin on these, some of it will warp and they kind of bow out that way, sort of almost inside out. And I figured if I used steel, it would actually straighten them out. It also straightens them out to get them seated into the frame. That helps them straighten out as well. But the issue I had with these frames, which printed really beautifully in PETG, is that the holes on this other end, this was the end that was facing up. It was facing up like this when I printed, so there's a lot of support material under there, and these little holes that are meant to be maybe like, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch deep at the most. On my prints, the holes didn't actually materialize, so I found where the holes were supposed to be. I could barely see it on the print, and I put dots there with a Sharpie, and I've actually had to go with the little drill bit, and I even made a piece of this steel. I kind of roughed up one end of it, and I've been kind of trying to auger out those holes so that they're actually holes. And eventually, once I get practiced at putting these in and then I get the fins painted, I'll actually have to cut all these rods to size and glue the rods into the holes. The holes here go through. They're really easy to find, but on this other end, I'm having to work on them a little bit. So the glue I might use, I have this Gorilla Glue clear grip glue that's pretty good. It's more of a rubbery type glue that can be removed easily. Or this gel CA stuff that's probably not as easy to get off. So, and this stuff can get all over the place and make everything stick together. So I'm still trying to decide which glue to go with. But I'm just going to practice putting this together before I paint or glue. And I've also then got to fit this little armature that is underneath all the fins, and the servo uses this to open them and close them. And the holes in this didn't really render very well, so I'm gonna have to probably use this little bitty screwdriver to ream those holes out so that they're about a 1/32 of an inch width. And in fact, the best thing to use to attach the fins is paperclip. I did get these fins printed for me by Sean over at Johnny 5 and Friends. Formerly Texas J5 Build, one of the most miraculous things in my whole process has been that Sean lives right here in Fort Worth, Texas, and it is wonderful to have a friend who has already built Johnny 5 and is willing to assist me by printing resin things. I don't have any resin printing capabilities, so this is going to take a little bit. I'll be back when I've gotten a little more done. Well, the weather was nice the other day, so I did a little painting. I've got these fins a nice silvery blue. They're kind of uneven. It's hard to see on the video, but I am going to repaint them. But I've got a good idea of what I need to do to get them looking the way I like. And the frames I've primered, and I've also cut all the pins out of 1/16 inch steel. The steel just slides into these holes and holds pretty well. I don't know that I'll have to glue this. I'll see once I get to building the final build on these. Here's one that I've put together temporarily. This is the one for the left side. Everything is slid in place, but not final yet. I used paper clip pieces to affix the fins to the armature, and then the little servo armature, I altered it so it's more like just a fork that goes on that pin for the second fin, and it moves the whole thing very well. Everything is really snug. The paper clips are snug, the steel rods are in there really snug. I don't know if I'm going to even have to glue any of that. It's in there really good, like friction fit so far. And I've got the little HS40 servo hooked up to the Mini Maestro, and that's hooked up to the computer. And let's test this out. So both of these are working now. The second set, these right-hand vents, were a little more fiddly than the first set. I think I just got lucky with the first ones, but I did have to do a little bit of rebuilding to get them to work. But I'm pretty happy with these. I am going to have to take them apart and repaint them and put them all back together, so we'll see how they're working after all that. So the second set of vents that I temporarily put together is not working so great, and the culprit is this strut here that links all the vents together. I had 3D printed that and the holes didn't come out properly, so I made them myself by hand with my drill bit and made kind of a mess, and had to re-drill some. One of them was too big. The vents were not tracking with the servo very well, so I reprinted this and ended up re-drilling everything on my drill here, just going really slow, and it worked out fine. I think it's going to get a lot better result. The other thing with these little struts and the little connectors on the vents is that everything needs to be sanded pretty well so that everything will fit, but not too tightly, so everything can move really freely. That makes a big difference. So now that I got these vents working, I had to take them apart so I could paint them. The blue on Johnny 5 is, to my eyes, a very subtle, light, metallic blue that I haven't found an exact match for. So my strategy was to paint a coat of the Duplicolor Bahama Blue and then a very light coat of this VHT Titanium Silver. It's kind of bluish. It's hard to see that on the camera there. And for the frames, I went with the same kind of graphite color that I also used for the eye flaps and some of the detail plates. I like this dark graphite. It's not quite as black as colors that Summer may be using, but I liked it for these frames. And the colors are very subjective. I think everybody's eye sees color differently, so those are the paints that I decided to go with. I'm going for more of a short circuit one kind of color scheme, and I will look forward to seeing these all put together in the next couple days after I clear coat them. And this is a good time to take a side note on colors. I thought I would talk more about them. These are the blue and the silver here that I used to get this silvery blue for these vents and the piece on the side of Johnny Five's head. And since I'm going for more of a low contrast short circuit palette, I'm also using this VHT. It's called plastic paint, and the color is aluminum. And to me, it doesn't really look like aluminum. It looks a little more gray, a little less silvery than aluminum. And so I thought it was a nice color that was silver enough and not as much of a steel color that they use in Short Circuit 2. And again, this is the graphite color right here that I did use on these frames for the vents. And then the color right here next to it is a black, but it's not a black, it's actually called black pearl, and it's a little bit metallic, and it's like a really dark graphite, and I used that on his nose, and I also used that on all these black plates that were on top of Johnny Five's head. I painted this whole thing black. All these little nurnies are actually all 3D printed as one piece on this plate. It was one big print. And I painted the whole thing this black pearl color. And then to get the metal colors on all the little pieces, on all the little components, I ended up getting this acrylic model paint, which is great because it's acrylic, dries really fast. And let's see, what's the brand name for this? It's called Vallejo. It's made for painting probably like pewter miniatures for adventure gaming, but this is like a metallic palette. It's got all these brass and gold and pewter and silver and copper. And I ended up mixing some of these colors to get exactly the colors that are up here. And then they were really bright, so then I made like a thin wash out of like the pewter color and then just kind of washed it over them to dull them a little bit. And they came out pretty nice. So I'm sure I'll be using these colors on the other panels that are like on his upper torso and on the lower torso part that have all the other little components all over them. So I like the whole thing overall. I'm getting a nice kind of Short Circuit 1 feel out of this, and those are the colors I'm using for that. So here's a vent all painted up and finished with the graphite color on the frame and the fins repainted all smooth. And I also put the little bitty 880 black oxidized steel screws in there for cosmetic reasons. They don't really serve any purpose on this version of this vent. And I put everything together. Finally, the paper clips are just bent to hold them in, but they're in there pretty snug. And then these steel rods, 1/16 inch steel rods here, ended up not needing any glue. But I also got pretty used to installing these because I had to take them apart and put them back together so many times with needle nose pliers. The ends of these paper clips and these little cut steel rods were doing a number on my fingers, so I got pretty adept with the needle nose pliers on all this. So this one is all put together, and paper clips are bent just enough to keep the fins affixed to the strut, and this one is all finished. I set the vents up with a test sequence in the Mini Maestro here, and they're working pretty good for the most part. The left one is just about as good as you can get, and the right one's a little quirky. It doesn't like to close all the way. There might be just too much play where the linkage is made between the servo and the strut, or the strut and the louvers. So I'm satisfied for the most part. I even changed this servo because I thought maybe the servo itself was a little quirky, but it has something to do with the mechanics in all those little parts that are linked together to get that movement. So something to keep working on. Overall, I'm happy with it. And Corduroy Johnny is even happy with it.